When you're writing a song, you're always going to be working in one key or another, whether meaning to or not. And each key has its own set of 7 chords that belong to it, built on the 7 notes that make up the parent scale of that key. These chords are known as the diatonic chords for that key. But what if you wanted to stray off the beaten track and throw in some chords from elsewhere? One way to do this is by using what are known as borrowed chords, taken or borrowed from the key parallel to the one you're working in. Parallel keys are simply keys based on scales that share the same root note, or tonic, as each other. For instance, C major and C minor are parallel scales as they both start from the note C. However, the notes in the C minor scale, when harmonised, produce a different set of chords to the notes in the C major scale. And it's these chords that you can borrow to make your major progressions sound a bit more exotic. Let's have a closer look. A diatonic chord means a chord that only uses notes from the parent scale of the key. So the diatonic chords for C major, for example, will be built off the notes of the C major scale. Diatonic chords in any major key can be labelled as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 diminished, and 1, where uppercase Roman numerals denote the major chords and lowercase numerals denote minor and diminished chords. So in the case of the key of C major, the diatonic chords will be C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. While this is certainly a good selection of chords to get us off the ground, with thousands of possible progression permutations, having only 7 basic chords at your disposal does tend to limit your horizons a bit. So let's explore some other chord options that we could borrow to add to a C major progression. In contrast to the diatonic chords for a major key, the chords for a minor key follow a different pattern. 1, 2 diminished, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. These are the triads you get when you stack thirds onto each note or degree of a natural minor scale. Borrowed chords are most often taken from a parallel minor key, and the parallel minor key to C major is C minor. This is because it starts on the same tonic note of C, but is based on a minor scale rather than a major one. So following this pattern, the chords that are diatonic to the key of C minor are C minor, D diminished, E flat major, F minor, G minor, A flat major, and B flat major. So when you use borrowed chords, all you're doing is taking chords from the parallel minor key and using them alongside chords from your major key. So if you were writing in C major, you could pinch any of the chords from C minor and use them. Or, if the song was in C minor, you could nick chords from C major and use those alongside the diatonic C minor chords. To give you an example, let's take a standard 1, 6, 4, 5 progression in C major, using the palette of regular diatonic chords shown earlier on. This gives us C major, A minor, F major, and G major. A pretty standard progression, but we could make it more interesting by swapping out one of these chords for one that's borrowed from the key of C minor. Looking at the substitute chords that are available in the key of C minor, we can pick and choose one to swap. When working in major keys, the typical chords borrowed from the natural minor key are 4, 6, 7, and if you're feeling a bit jazz, the 2 diminished. So, how about switching the F major chord for an F minor, giving us C major, A minor, F minor, G major. This lends the progression a different feel altogether. Here's another example, based this time on a 1, 3, 2, 5 progression, which in the key of C major would give us C major, E minor, D minor, G major, as shown here. We can use a borrowed chord as a passing chord to smooth out the transition between the 3 chord, E minor, and the 2 chord, D minor. The logical choice here would be an E flat major chord, which is the 3 chord of the harmonised natural C minor scale. It makes sense because its root note of E flat provides a chromatic step down or single semitone descent between the E minor and D minor chords. So it works really well as a passing chord. Since this is an inversion of E flat major, the root note appears in the centre of the chord. Here's a version that uses 7th chords and different inversions. Once you start to use borrowed chords with slightly more complex voicings, it can really ramp things up a notch. There's also a sneaky D minor 7 to D flat major 7 tritone substitution on the 5 chord here, where we substitute one chord for another whose root note is a tritone, or 6 semitones, away from the original. Our final example this month features a completely diatonic progression in C major. C major, G major, E minor, A minor, F major, G major, and C major. We're going to borrow a bunch of chords from the key of C minor once again, to make things just a little bit more interesting. Let's take E flat major, F minor, and A flat major, the 3, 4, and 6 chords. So now we switch the E minor in our original progression for an E flat major, the A minor for an A flat major, and the F major for an F minor. This results in a new progression of C major, G major, E flat major, A flat major, F minor, G major, and C major. Ironically, this now becomes almost a minor progression in its own right, except for the fact that it resolves back from G major to the C major chord at the end.